Good. You got everything you need?
Yeah, it looks great. Thank you very much.
Well,
Your kids Manchester or London?
my kids are here. Well, no, they're not. Daniel's in London. Daniel's living in London now. I keep forgetting. My daughter's
Right, might get on there.
2 grandchildren here. And Amanda just became a grandma.
I'm in Manchester, so.
Well, it's not raining there. I've got a few there, so I was like.
Hi, good evening. My name is Michael Uyghur, and I'm the Chief Executive of the Board of Deputies. And I really want to start by thanking all of our candidates for travelling here from, this all came from London. Vice presidential candidates in an hour will be different. And I also want to thank very much David. David is not the originally intended chair of the team at Hustings, who is currently ill in bed. And so really this afternoon, I called David and he very graciously agreed. And David is going to chair Hustings in a minute. I also want to thank CST, who are, I believe, outside, and also our technical crew who have been helping us. So, because David really had no time to prepare, I'm just going to explain what's going to happen, and then I'm going to put it in David's hands. But each of the candidates is going to speak for 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds, just to outline their key statements they wish to make, and that's in a previously agreed order. Then there'll be questions. Now, I'm sure David will have a question or two he'll want to put, and then really the whole point of the hour is for you to ask your questions. Each candidate will have a minute to answer the question. Sarah here at the front has a green and red time thing. So when the green one goes up, you've got 20 seconds left, and when the red one goes up, please stop. And that's how we're going to try and run it. At the very end of the hour, each of the candidates, also in a predetermined order, will have a chance for a final 1 minute. Then they'll end, they'll depart, and the vice presidential candidates will come on, and we will repeat the concept. So start thinking of questions. That would be the thing I would ask you all to do. And what this is, democracy in process, right? Although there are other organisations who are democratic in the way they run, I don't think any other Jewish community organisation has a democratic culture that the board has, and it's something to really celebrate and take pride in, and I'm so grateful you're here. I wish all the candidates good luck, and over to you, David. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. And I guess, first of all, just to say, as the Chief Exec of the Nicky, a warm welcome to you all to be here tonight. I would really ask the candidates to stick to the time as agreed, because I don't want to be pulling out cables, as I've been asked to do if anyone speaks too long. And the other request from me to everyone here is, when you do ask a question, just keep them concise. Don't go on and on asking a question that takes up the whole evening. I think we've all been in meetings where that happens, and it's not a pleasant experience. So, without further ado, can we turn to Michael for his introduction?
Deputies, ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, David. We are in the fight of our lives to ensure that British Jews can continue to live peacefully without fear in this country. We must continue to flourish, contribute, and play our full part in civil society. The frightening challenge of the rise of anti-Semitism is shown by the swastikas at London's Saturday March and the continued attempts by these people to disrupt our daily activities. The cost of living crisis has hit our community hard, and we have poverty growing in the community. We have to continue as well with our core work. This is the time for outstanding, experienced, and real leadership. My style of leadership is listening, embracing, and leading from the front. In the last year, I travelled to over 200 shuls in many regions and listened and heard many things about the Board of Deputies. I've lived and worked and been involved in communal life across the regions, and I need your help. I will institute new groups: the President's Advisory Group, the Cobra Crisis Planning Group, the Media Response Group. I will ensure a balance across the spectrum of views and geography, and I want younger deputies to play their part, and they will build the next generation. And with your support, I want to lead a team which harnesses the energy of all deputies.
Thanks, Michael. We're going to have to stop it there. Thank you. And now we call upon Sheila. Thank you.
Who's trying to pick the smoke?
Send the other mic over.
Sorry?
Oh.
It's fine. You've all got your own.
Go on.
My name's Sheila Giewab and I'm standing to be President of the Board of Deputies of British Jews. I've been Vice President, Senior Vice President, and now I chair the Board's Outreach Education Working Group. For over 40 years, I have travelled all over the UK, speaking to thousands of non-Jewish school children about our beliefs, practices and culture, to help fight the myths and misconceptions that can lead to Jewish race hate. Sometimes I come across a young child who proudly tells me, I'm part Jewish, and that's wonderful to hear. But since October the 7th, they have been told by their parents when they go to London to hide the fact that they're Jewish or there'll be trouble. It breaks my heart, and it has to stop. The board has been invisible with this leadership in protecting and defending our community. We need to do more. As President, I would have 3 priorities. First of all, we need to challenge the myths, the lies, the media bias that we see every day on TV and reading in the newspapers. We need to shout louder than our enemies. What are we about? Who are we for? Secondly, we need to educate about Israel and about being Jewish. And thirdly, we need to harness the experience and skills of all our deputies all over the UK. We can do this together to be loud and proud about being Jewish in the UK. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Amanda.
I hope this works. Can you hear me? No? No? Can you hear me now?
No.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. I'm Amanda Bowman and I want to be your president and build a better board. A stronger, more united community that celebrates and supports our rich diversity and heritage. As your vice president, I've been honoured to serve you, to earn your trust and to secure the welfare of our community. As your president, I'll tackle immediate threats head on and will empower both deputies and communities to shape a vibrant Jewish life in the UK. At a time when the risks to social cohesion are great, and when events in Israel and Gaza feed polarisation here, I'll continue to protect the freedoms, rights and security of British Jews. The anti-Semitism you've witnessed here in Manchester over the last few weeks has been quite shocking, and as your president, I commit to be more present in your community and to listen and help you in doing what's necessary to build our community's trust in public bodies. While the temptation might be to hunker down, I want us to look outwards beyond our community to build bridges across faith groups, across our communal organisations and of course across all our deputies, young and old, left and right, across all denominations and across our nation, and to deliver our work strategically in a spirit of openness, transparency and respect. There are different ways to lead and my way is one of collaboration. And so my presidency will be marked by inclusivity and empowerment. I've engaged deputies in everything I've done, and I'll continue to do so.
Thank you, Amanda. I have to draw it to a close. Thank you. And now over to Phil.
Good evening. My name's Phil Rosenberg. We all know that we face an unprecedented challenge: the massive rise in anti-Semitism against the backdrop of Israel's war of defence against Hamas. And in Manchester, we felt this more acutely than in many places. Over the last month, the by-election in Rochdale, the incident at the Children's Hospital, the despicable detention of survivors of the 7th of October at Manchester Airport, and a concerning incident at the Home Theatre. And we must rise to these challenges, but we must do so not with negativity or with London centricity. And that's why I've today launched 10 pledges for regional communities that build on my recruitment of the excellent Sarah Radovan as our first ever regional manager. These include £100,000 per year to support activism across the UK outside of London, 200 copies of the Jewish Living Experience exhibition to support education against anti-Semitism to build bridges of understanding, and the empowerment of our 300 deputies to advocate to local politicians, local media and local faith communities. As President, I will build an unprecedented level of engagement right across this country, and that's why I ask for your vote on the 12th of May. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, candidates, and thank you for sticking to the time limit. Well, I have the honour of asking the first question. So, my question is, as someone born in London, but living in Manchester since 1998, and now considering myself an adopted and proud Mancunian, I'm conscious of how the communities outside of London feel that everything, especially our communal organisations, is London-centric. The board has improved visibility here in Manchester with its staff members. My question is, how will you, if successful in becoming president, ensure that Manchester and the regions are better represented within British jewellery? And I will ask Michael to go first.
So you can hear me at the back this time. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, I was born in Leeds, and I've come across exactly the same issues about organisations and the board particularly being London-centric. My plan would be, number one, to have much more regional meetings. And at a regional meeting, I recently suggested we should have sub-regions, so bringing people together in smaller areas of the country. I would also be looking to bring people from Israel, outstanding speakers, to speak to the communities. So those are sort of two of the key things that I talk about. And finally, I would want to have more regional involvement on the committees that we set up and working through the organisation. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheila.
Thank you, David. I'm from Cardiff United Synagogue. I was born in Cardiff. I travelled all over. I lived in Cumbria for 20 years. There are Jews everywhere. What I don't want to see is weekends in regions being cancelled because we don't have enough support, because we're not resourced as a community. We need to have the Hustings. Somebody said to me today, why aren't we having them in the Midlands? Why aren't we having them in the South Coast? You know, Zoom is an amazing thing. We can go everywhere, but we need to be out in person. Should I be elected, I want a programme of honorary officers and vice chairs visiting all regions, all communities. We don't have to go for a whole Shabbat. Invite us. We want to come and tell you about the amazing work that the board does. The regions are really important, and the board needs to accept this and welcome it and celebrate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. And the same question for you, Amanda.
Thank you. Can you hear me now? Good. Okay, so if half of our British Jews are in the Greater London area, half of our British Jews are outside of London, and so it's really important, if we're going to be representative of the whole of British Jewry, that we actually do hear the voice of regional deputies and regional communities. That's why I'm going to be instituting president surgeries, coming round the country and up to Wales and out to Scotland, to make sure that me and my HOs are hearing the concerns of our deputies, but also of the wider community. As Sheila's already said, there is absolutely no reason why plenaries have to be in London, and we'll have a lot more plenaries outside of London under my presidency. And talk to my division. 5 of my division are from outside of London, and we all work very well together. We hear the voice of what's going on outside of London, and that's what I will continue to do.
Thank you, Amanda. And same question for Phil.
Of course, well, as I mentioned, I've launched 10 pledges for regional communities. This is, for me, an essential part of what I'm seeking to do. And I've already developed this a bit by, as I said, in recruiting our first ever regional manager in the person of the brilliant Sarah Adaban. But we've got to go a lot further. Look, I'd love to have 300 Sarah Adabans, but we actually have 300 deputies. And we should be empowering each and every one of them, because that gives us, the board, an unprecedented and unparalleled presence right across the country. And if we can use that volunteer force properly, that is a game changer. If every deputy knows their local MP, their local councillors, their local faith leaders, their local media, that changes the game. We also need to back up the volunteers and staff with resources, and that's why I say we should have a £100,000 fighting fund. why we should have 200 copies of the Jewish Living Experience exhibition, so that we make it easy, we empower deputies and we give them the resources to succeed. I've already started planning the first regional plenary that would happen under my watch, because I think we need to give more notice, but we should have, I think, every year a Manchester plenary in addition to the regional plenary.
Thank you, Phil.
And that's an important point too.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now I'm going to open it up to the audience here. Who would like to ask the first question? Ivan, so you have first.
Thanks very much, David. You're all extremely distinguished public servants. Manchester is the fastest growing Jewish community in Europe. The predominant proportion of that growth is in the Haredi community. So how are you going to make this board relevant to our whole community and be a force for unity at a time when our community in this country and around the world needs that more than ever before? And all of you have been distinguished public servants for a significant period of time. What have you actually done tangibly to benefit this community here in Manchester during that period you've served in office? Thank you very much.
Thank you, and we will ask Sheila to answer that question first.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you. So, yeah, the Haredi, I agree with you. We need to have more engagement. You know, working for the board and meeting governments, protecting our customs, our Shahita, our Brit Milah, the Haredim get the benefit of this. It's almost like not belonging to the union and getting the pay rise. And we need to have conversations that people appreciate it and have engagement with that. What have I done for this community? The Jewish Living Experience exhibition is my project. I grew that over the last 6 years. With the board's help and the resources we have. We've had it in Manchester Cathedral, we've been here, Jeremy has been amazing support, we've got Anna now from Manchester, she's the most, again, amazing staff support. So education within Manchester is really important to support the community. Thank you.
Thank you, and same question for Amanda.
Thanks, David. So, working with the strictly Orthodox community, firstly, the Defence Division is a division where we cannot do our work to protect and secure the religious freedoms and traditions without working closely with the Haredi community. So whether that's in working with them on burials or on Milah or Shahita, whether it's talking with the police or the transport for London and other transport authorities around the issues particularly facing those communities. I work very closely with and engage them as much as I can. In terms of specifically with Manchester, I was delighted to be here about 18 months ago for a local councillor seminar where we raised awareness of what the Jewish community needed right across the Jewish community, and that was a hugely successful initiative. Thank you.
And same question for Phil.
Thank you. Well, in addition to recruiting Star Relevant, which answers the Manchester point a bit, and I'll come back to that, I recruited the first Haredi deputy in 50 years from Stamford Hill to become a deputy. And one of the amazing things about this campaign has been outreach from communities in Gateshead, Canvey Island, North London, and Salford, wishing me luck and saying that more might be possible were I to be elected president. The local councillor seminar is something I pioneered. It was something I created. And I'd say something more. I mean, one of the things that I led on is the fight against anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. I secured the proscription of Hamas and Hezbollah. These are things that affect the whole UK Jewish community in addition to Manchester. And just imagine if the Hamas flag was allowed to be flown in the streets of our country. It doesn't bear thinking about. So, a long track record in both areas.
Thank you, Phil. And same question for Michael.
So, as far as the Haredi community is concerned, I've been talking with them about how we can get more people involved and how we can get their involvement. I've met with the leadership of the Haredi community over the last few months, and whilst they may not necessarily come on board with membership of the board, they want to work with us. We want to find closer relationship, and I know that I can deliver to the board, if I'm elected president, that relationship, and hopefully also with the relationship here in Manchester. Moving on, as far as what I've been involved in Manchester, is the Maccabi building. We've worked very closely in bringing both Maccabi GB together with Maccabi Manchester, and we now have an excellent relationship that everybody is delighted with. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. And we have a question from the back from the President of the Leeds Jewish Community.
Yeah, I'm in Manchester.
It's got a bit lost.
The question I've got is this. Leadership isn't just about leading, it's about getting people involved. On the 12th of May, one of you is going to have a great deal of work, and 3 of you are not. How is the person who's elected, bearing in mind what Ivan has said about all of your great communal skills and activity over the years, how is the person who's elected going to ensure that we do not lose the other 3 of you from our active, principled communal life?
Thank you for the question. Amanda, over to you to start.
Thank you. Well, I think all of us have said that we want to empower all our deputies to be as engaged as we possibly can be. But you're absolutely right, Lawrence. You know, I've been on the exec of the board for 9 years now, and I fully intend to continue to be engaged in whatever way I can be, preferably with your vote as president. But there will be many different ways for deputies to be engaged, whether that's on any of our working groups or any of our new initiatives that will be coming through as we move forward, whether that's in looking at the constitution and the governance changes that need to be made, or whether it's in leading any of the campaigns that you've all been able to see in my manifesto.
Thank you. Same question for Phil.
Thank you very much. Well, I like all of these people very much. It's an embarrassment of riches, and should I be lucky enough to be elected, I would have roles for each and every one of them that wants to serve, because I think all of them bring brilliant skills to the table, and I would just love to harness that. But as I've said, for me it's about harnessing the abilities of all 300 deputies. If each and every one of the deputies knows their local politicians, local faith leaders, local councillors, local media, then everything that the board does at the centre is scaled 300 times around the country. It's a game changer. And if we can do that, then we are going to be able to face the challenge. We've always needed to punch above our weight. Let's do it even more with the 300 deputies everywhere in the country.
Thank you, Phil. And finally, Michael. Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. It's not final. Michael. Messed up already.
I talked about having 3 groups: the President's Advisory Group, the Cobra Crisis Planning Group, the Media Response Group. I would hope that all 3 of the people who are not elected would get involved with those for a start. I would hope that they can take major roles in the board in helping to run the board. They understand the board, and together with the other deputies that we've got, I would also make sure, and I've been doing this, talking to people and asking them what their skill sets are. We've got some phenomenal skill sets. Last week I found somebody who is a fundraiser, for example, and now I'm hopefully going to get him involved. And that's by going to meet people. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And my apologies again.
That's okay.
Sheila, over to you.
I don't normally get overlooked. Lawrence, that's the most amazing question. We have had presidential candidates who haven't been successful, and we have never seen them again. And I would like to think that the integrity of everybody who's standing for this role, this amazing leadership role, which is only leading because we have such amazing deputies, as Phil said, the skill sets that we have amongst us, I would like to think everybody is going to be committed to work with whichever person, we all respect each other, is elected. On a personal basis, I'm never going to stop doing what I'm doing, but being president would be the most important thing should I be elected. But the education side of the board's work, which has grown exponentially, will really be a priority, as is defending and protecting our community. Everybody here will be able to have a part of that should I be elected. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now the gentleman sat next to Ivan.
Oh, sorry. So my name's Alan Lieberman. I'm a doctor. I'm just surviving. My name is Alan Lieberman. I am a doctor. I work at Manchester Foundation Trust. I'm the most senior Jewish clinician in Manchester. Okay, working at that trust. I've been a member of the deputy for the board since August. Okay. I'm just warning you. In my opinion, the entire generation of doctors in this country, up to consultant grade and beyond, are becoming radicalised. There's about 30,000 doctors in a Facebook group for the contract, and it is a sewer. It's a sewer of Jew hatred. Okay? It's not been done. It's not been.
Sorry, can I just move you to the question?
Okay, so
please?
my question is: some of you have been on the board for a long time, and I am very unclear what you've done to protect the Jews of this country. It's really unclear to me. It seems to me that the Board of Deputies is a peacetime
So the question...
how are you going to change this from a peacetime body to something that's fit for the crisis that we're facing? Because none of you have convinced me about that. None of you.
I think we'll turn to Phil to answer that one first, please.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for all that you've been doing, I know personally, to take on this challenge. And we need to step up. We need to step change. And one of the things that I would do as president is launch a commission on anti-Semitism to review all of these matters in the round and make recommendations at each level. Whether that's how the failings in civic society, including in professional bodies, universities, the media, and so on, so that we come up with recommendations and a package of training for those organisations. Second of all, a full review of hate crime legislation, policing and prosecution, so that we know that we have the law and the enforcement in place to protect us. And third, a full review of interfaith education and training, so that we know how to make the positive case to the communities around us to inoculate them against the virus of anti-Semitism in the first place. So you're right, the situation has changed since the 7th of October, and we need to step up to meet it, and I have a plan to meet it.
Thank you. Michael?
For me, we can't wait for reports. We've got to get on with it now. I've been talking with one of our deputies who's got a plan which starts to attack all areas, BBC, universities, and one of the things that we will do is also work with campaign against anti-Semitism, and we will start now by working with them. This is a really serious issue, the whole question of Jew hatred. And as part of that plan, deputies will be earmarked in different cities to be able to go not only to the councillors, but also to go to their universities, so that the 4 key people at the universities already will understand and work with us in different areas. So my plan is to actually get going now and move things forward quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheila?
We need to start shouting louder. We need to have our voice heard. What are we afraid of? We need to be out there. I went to an event last week that talked about combating anti-Semitism on social media that young people are reading, that we're not aware of. We have an under 35 group of deputies with the skill sets to be able to monitor social media and be able to challenge these things. Part of my job, I'm from Cardiff. We have people in Cardiff Hospital, radiographers and nurses, who are told to examine results in a separate room because they've heard anti-Semitic chants in the front. It's terrible and it's not good enough. But we need education. We need to get to these people. I help train health workers in Leicester, and we need to challenge these myths and these lies that they're hearing. We really need to start making a lot of noise and get our voice on the TV as well as our enemies.
Thank you. Amanda?
Thanks, David. Ilan, I'm fully aware of the frustration, and I think we all feel it, and we're all doing as much as we can right now in the way that we've done it up till now. But as you've heard, there are lots of new ideas and different ideas of how to do things differently. One of the things that my division has been doing is working with unions, with councils, and with professional bodies to help them understand about how they can make sure that the people they're working with do not cross the line into anti-Semitism, and to have those lines firmly put down. Because it isn't good enough that people in the health service are walking around with their Palestinian flags on their sleeves or on their computers. It's not good enough, the kind of abuse that Jewish patients are feeling, and it's not good enough that council chambers have become absolutely vile.
Thank you. Sorry to cut you off there. Okay, a question from Victor Huglin.
Victor Huglin, Liverpool representative and Liverpool Football Club supporter. There are three very quick questions. Firstly, because of the dissatisfaction of the board, there's been other organisations, communal organisations, supposedly speaking for British Jewry. How do you each intend to work with them, against them, or what's your views on that, number one? Secondly, what do you intend to do to help the students on campus positively rather than, let's say, some positive actions, what you intend to do? And thirdly, what is your view regarding the Israeli elected government? Because last time there was, in recent years, there's been a representative of the Israeli government in this country, or coming to this country, and the board passed a comment saying they weren't welcome. How dare the board say something like that? And what is your views on your relationship with the Israeli government?
Thank you. Michael, I'll turn to you first.
Michael Ziff, Leeds United, in case you haven't heard that. Dissatisfaction with the board. There have been these organisations set up, such as the CAA. I will and have already started to talk with them and others already, and that I will certainly lead and push forward. Students, I've already intimated that local deputies are going to be able to introduce to the key people at the universities, so that when we have a problem in the university, we can go and see the senior people head on straight away. And finally, Israel and election, and whoever is elected in Israel. A majority of Jews in Britain have support Israel. We are the British board, we're the Board of Deputies of British Jews, and therefore we support Israel.
Thank you, Michael. Sure.
3 questions in 1 minute. Here we go. Other organisations. This is not a competition to see which is the best Jewish community organisation to support our community. We all need to be working together. We're all in this together, you know, we have enough enemies. We need to pick up the phone, we need to start speaking and supporting each other's work. We don't need to try and take them over, we just need to work with them and engage and support. University students, the UJS is the most amazing organisation who does fantastic work with JSOCs all over the UK. We need to support the UJS with what the support they need. They don't need to see us trying to come and take over. We need to support their work, and if they need us, they will ask. Israel, we should not have to engage with people. We engage with everybody, but we don't have to support their views. As Michael said, we're the Board of Deputies of British Jews, and we will never have everybody happy about our view. So what we have to say is, you know, we will engage with everybody, doesn't have to agree with them.
Thank you. Amanda.
Thank you. So the first question was how will we work with other groups, and what they're all sort of jumping up and being out there. So the board works on a very wide canvas, and many of the other groups that have come up over the last few years are specifically focused on one or other issue. Many of them are see themselves as disruptors, and they don't want to be part of the mainstream. They don't really want to collaborate and work with us. They prefer to be a little bit outside. But we do need to be coordinated. We need to be facing in the same direction so that we're all working towards the same overall goals. And the board is the organisation that can actually do that. In terms of working with young people on campus, UJS is an amazing organisation, and we will always let them take the lead where they want to take the lead. But I want to create a standing committee on higher education, so when there is a crisis, we can come together quickly and agree together on what the right action should be. And in terms of the Israeli government, we are the Board of Deputies of British Jews. We don't vote there, and we have no right to talk about what they do there.
Thank you. And Phil.
Well, thank you, Victor. Good question. Look, we've seen since the 7th of October a massive challenge, and now is not the time for division, it's a time for unity. I've been in touch with both the CAA and the JLC today on various matters, so I'm already preparing to work with all the organisations in the community, and we've been talking about how we will work together. As for the Israeli government, again, you know, 7th of October has changed things. You know, there were protests, big protests in Israel and the UK right on top up until then, and we've now seen that Israel's security is our security. So my pledge is to work with whatever Israeli government is there. We might have disagreements, we should maybe air them privately, but never end up in a situation where we're head to head with the government, unless, and only unless, there's a vote of deputies to say that, because we need a mandate if there was that situation. The only exception I would make to that, the only exception, is if there's attack on a particular stream of Judaism, where Israel is for some reason looking to divide off for reasons that are arbitrary. Part of what I see as the Zionist movement, passing rules that discriminate against progressive communities, then I would probably say something at least privately, and
Thanks,
then only necessarily publicly.
Thanks, Phil. I've got to end that there. Sorry. Thank you. Okay. My apologies to the candidates. Rookie error, allowing 3 questions in one for such a limited amount of time. So I'm going to ask everyone if you could just restrict your question to 1 question, please. A short question, please. Who would like to ask the next question?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I think Gordon Globe, Deputy for the Merseyside Jury.
Speak up. You need to speak up, sorry.
Okay, I'm Gordon Globe, also a Scouser, and a Deputy for the Merseyside Jewish Representative Council. I want to ask the view of the deputies, the candidates, as to the two-state solution. The board has anchored itself in recent times for sure to the two-state solution in Israel and with whoever. Is that viable?
Thank you. Sheila, to you.
Thank you, Gordon. Good to see you here. So the board does support a two-state solution. The British government supports a two-state solution. We can never say never to our support in this situation. Things may change, but at this moment in time, the board, and as a president, I would continue to support the two-state solution. Thank you.
To you, Amanda.
Thank you, Gordon. I think it was certainly in this last triennium, or maybe at the end of the previous one, the deputies took a vote on whether we should retain our policy on a two-state solution. And while we still have that policy, that will be the policy of the board. It feels like it's a distant goal. It's a North Star that we should be aiming for. And until and unless there's a better solution, it's the two-state solution for me.
Thank you. Phil.
Look, we've all heard the criticisms and the concerns about the viability of a two-state solution, but the deputies have not been given enough votes on policy, and this is an important vote. And I think until I and the deputies are persuaded there's a better solution, the two-state solution is the one to back. But even if that looks somewhat distant, there's still more that we could be doing with expanding the Abraham Accords. And one of the things I've been very active with is working with the embassies of all the different partners of the Abraham countries. I've been to all of the Abraham Accord countries, personal relationships with all the ambassadors, as well as Jordan and Egypt. And this is where we can continue to build the outside-in piece as well, whilst hoping that we will see peace and security between Israelis and Palestinians. That shouldn't stop us pursuing the wider peace in the region as well.
Thank you. And Michael.
We need two people to agree two sides to agree a two-state solution. We haven't got that at this moment in time, and until that happens, it's a dream. Yes, we will continue to debate it, but I come back to what I said earlier. We have to support Israel. We are the British Board of Deputies of British Jews, and that is the important thing here. And we need to support Israel as to what Israel wants to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Question from gentleman from Leeds again. Thank you.
Yeah, his biggest mistake was asking 3 questions in one. I have 2 one question each. The question I've got, as the president of a representative council, I've heard all of you say that you will empower deputies to go do this, that and the other. Representative councils already do those things. How are you going to work with us? Because as Sheila and Phil know, I can be really grumpy when somebody comes to Leeds and does something I don't know about. Because for the greatest will in the world, you don't live in Leeds, I do. You don't have the Bishop of Leeds for tea this morning, I do. And so it's important for us to work together. So how are you going to work as an organisation with the representative councils who represent our local communities?
Amanda.
Thanks, Lawrence. Well, you told us what we're going to do. and you know, I would take your lead. No, but seriously, we already bring the representative councils together to talk to each other, but we need to be, when I'm president, I'll be talking with you all more individually as well. I already talked about my presidential surgeries, but working with the rep councils individually and together will be a key part of what I would do, because we have 300 deputies, but we also have some fantastic representative councils who are getting deep and deep down and into the nitty-gritty of what's going on locally. We can't do our work without you.
Well, thank you, Lawrence. Look, we are very well served by representative councils, and we should take the lead from those representative councils. And indeed, as the deputy for the representative council, this is exactly the model I'm talking about. Many of our deputies and our organisations are already doing this, but a lot of the parts of the country do not have a representative council, so we need to empower those deputies, and also where the board can act as a coordinator that joins the dots. So if we have something that we agree is a national priority, of course it will be the representative councils delivering that in those areas, but what about the areas where there are no representative councils? And the board will bring the deputies together, the representative councils together, to be a force multiplier and really punch at our weight. So I don't think that there's any contradiction between what you're saying and what I'm saying. We can just do it even better in the new format I'm discussing.
Thank you, Michael.
There is absolutely #1 intention to work closely with each of the leaders of the communities, and that means going to see them, understanding what they have got as a situation. The other thing is, when we know somebody's going to make a visit, we need to make sure you know that there's a visit, and we need to make sure that that is done in conjunction with the Board of Deputies, and that is an absolute priority. Where they don't have a representative council, it'll be up to us to make sure that we train them up to effectively have a shadow representative council so they can do some of these things. But as far as I'm concerned, #1, I'm going out to visit the communities. I've had a history of doing that all my life. Both my brother, who you know, and my son will be delighted that I won't be bugging them, and I'll be doing something for the Board of Deputies, so thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And Sheila?
Yes, thank you, Lawrence. Yeah, you're very grumpy. So when I first became vice president, the rep councils hardly met, maybe once or twice a year. Now we have regular meetings. I hope to see you tomorrow morning when we have our 9:30 meeting. We have come together a lot more. We have Sarah in Manchester who's coordinating, but you're quite right when you say there are areas that don't have any Jewish rep council to support. So I would have a programme of engagement with those areas. We could bring small hubs together in local areas. But sometimes we are finding that people on Zoom are missing out. We're not having in-person meetings. And it would be really good to be able to have rep councils coming together in areas where they can actually speak to each other, and, to do that. But the board's come a long way, and we will continue with that good work because it does show reciprocal support.
Thank you. I'm going to throw a question in now, if I may. Yeah. So we see a large growing Haredi community here in the UK, and especially here in Manchester. So how are you going to get more Haredim involved in the Board of Deputies?
That's been asked.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's already been asked by Ivan.
I would ask another one then. Okay. How can the board respond to an ageing Jewish community and its needs? And I'll go to Phil, sorry for that. Yeah, sorry, keep it. I'm using this mic.
Okay, brilliant. Well, look, I think one of the things that we have to do is engage with all parts of our community. We have some quite brilliant social care provision, for example, at the older end of the ageing community in a lot of parts of the country. But of course, not every part of the Jewish community has that provision. And one of the things that I put in as policy into our local government manifesto is that there should be the ability to transfer payments when someone wants to take social care, for example, in an area which they don't live in because they want specifically culturally appropriate care. Many of our older community members have a disability, and one of the things I've pledged to do is launch a commission on disability inclusion in the Jewish community, so we properly map what's going on, what provision is good, and learn how we can be as inclusive as possible. That represents people of all ages, but this is something that disproportionately affects older people. And so I think there's a full programme of engagement we can do, and I'd be proud to do that.
Thank you, Phil. Same question for Michael.
So I don't know what part of old you were talking about. So we've got old and retired and old people who are less active. As far as the old and retired are concerned, I think it's a great opportunity for us to get them involved in some of the activities of the community. Go and talk to them, see what they're interested in, and see how they can help others. And there's a lot of work to be done in the community. As far as the old and less active are concerned, and those with disabilities, we've clearly got to look at the resource that the community has and work closer with the likes of Jewish Care and organisations like the Jewish Welfare Board, Manchester Rep, and make sure that we're really working closely with all of those groups as well.
Thank you. Sheila.
Yeah, I agree with Michael. We do need to support the community organisations who support older people, especially those with need special care. But you know, the board is reflective of all ages, and I would like to think that we, with older deputies and younger deputies, can relate to the wider community. So we have deputies who would come to us and reflect those views, and we can have discussions, debates at the board. It would be really good to see issues like this discussed with the deputies, not just at the hustings or when there's an election. I think these issues really need to be investigated, and it would be really good to have deputies' input into some of these discussions.
Thank you, Sheila. Amanda.
Thank you. Some of you will be aware that in 2021 I started a campaign with the ONS to get ethnicity put into the census data, so that local authorities and councils were more aware of who their Jewish community were and what their needs would be. And by having that data, local councils and authorities will be more aware and be able to provide culturally sensitive services to their ageing Jewish community. And that means that our Jewish charities should be able to get more support, and the provision should be better. Michael talked about different types of ageing Jewish communities, and my mum was a Jewish care volunteer at the age of 84, and that was a change for Jewish care, that their volunteers are getting older. And so we mustn't forget the fact that for our active elders, we need to keep engaging them, and our Jewish communal organisations need to find ways to do that.
Thank you. A question from the second row here. Thank you.
Yeah. I wanted to follow up the question that was just asked from the floor just before, and really to get specific. Recently, I think you referred to it, there's been 2 anti-Semitic incidents that caused a great deal of concern in our community. First of all, there was the whole issue about Manchester Airport and the 2 young men there, 2 young Israelis that were treated very badly there. And the second issue is about Home, which is used as a base for the Jewish Film Festival, and is now in a whole dispute over a Palestinian festival that's meant to be held there. And I know the Rep Council here has written letters and has taken a stand. I'd really like to know though, what is the board, because I haven't heard anything, so I don't know. What has the board done to actually support the Rep Council and the Jewish community here on those 2 specific Jewish issues of concern?
Michael.
So, as far as the airport incident was concerned, a letter was sent. We've gone out there to do, like many of these anti-Semitic issues that we've had, to try and support and make sure that we are doing our job as the Board of Deputies. As far as the issue that you've just raised, the second issue, it's not one that I can pass comment on, so I'll pass that over to somebody else who can answer it better than I can.
Thank you. Sheila.
Thank you, that's a brilliant question, and I, again, can't relate to these specific events, but I come from Cardiff. Last Thursday in Cardiff, a group of my friends from this community were confronted by 30 Palestinians, and it was a really difficult, awkward situation. The manager stood by, the staff stood by, eventually the police were called. What did I do? I got onto the board staff who are making representation to the store, to Sainsbury's store, but this isn't being recorded or they would have to respond. But it's really bad, and the board needs to know when this is happening, so there's a reporting system through the Rep Council to come to board staff, so the board can write letters and make representation to the authorities to get some action.
Thank you. Amanda.
Thank you. So, both of these incidents, the three incidents that you refer to, including the hospital incident, all took place in Manchester, and the first people to act were the Rep Council. But I spoke with the Rep Council to ask them to brief me on what they had done and to give my support and ask them what more I could do. And as a result of that, as Michael says, we've written letters. In terms of we've written letters to the government to reinforce the letters that the Rep Council had done. In terms of the theatre incident, we have. I have an anti-Semitism in culture working group, and we've been pretty successful in lobbying venue owners and raising awareness of the kind of issues that we're doing, and we're happy to share that with the Rep Council as we go forward.
Thank you. Phil, same question.
Well, thank you very much. Eve, you might well ask that question, because I had looked back over the board's statements and it has not made a statement on any single one of those incidents, whether in the Manchester airport, whether the theatre, or whether in the children's hospital. Some of the letters from the Rep Council were retweeted, but that's about it in public. And I think the Manchester community is right to expect the board to be visible on these issues. And what I'm saying is, and this is part of my 10 pledges, we need to get much closer to the communities and start saying, well, not that it's in Manchester so it doesn't matter. We need to speak up because it's in Manchester. Manchester is part of the United Kingdom, and the Board of Deputies of British Jews represents every part of this country, and we should absolutely be visible.
Thank you so much. Now, if I may, I'm going to ask the candidates just to for their closing remarks. I know, but we've got time constraints, so I'm sorry. Michael, you okay? Or do you want to?
One more question.
One more question then, Johnny at the back.
Much appreciated. Johnny Langford, Deputy for Jewish Action for Mental Health. Deputies on mental health. You will be aware, I hope, that our services in the voluntary and faith communities are very efficient in terms of mental health, and yet at the same time we see services such as child and adolescent mental health, adult mental health, having huge waiting lists. What can you do to influence government to get some of that money in those statutory services moved to a much more efficient service that can better deliver for people of faith and other communities?
I'm going to ask Sheila to answer first, please.
Thanks, Johnny, absolutely, and thank you for the amazing work you do. Yes, you're under-resourced. All mental health organisations need support. What the board can do is support you and your application to the government. We don't want to take over your work. You come to us and we will give you any support that you need to help reinforce any submissions or for funding that you want, okay? And that's my pledge to you.
Amanda, if you'd like to answer that question.
Thank you, Johnny. We have members of the board who are working in health and mental health and social care, and so I would bring together those people. I would bring together a group to look at what the issues are, to look at what they have done that's worked, to share good practice, and then as a result of that to create a plan and then to go to government when we've got the information and when we know what we're asking for. Happy to do it, but we need the plan.
Thank you, Phil.
Well, first of all, again, thank you for your excellent work at JAMH. First of all, I think that what the board has to do a lot better is champion its members, and this is a huge part of what we need to do. We need to be in regular dialogue, whether it's helping to facilitate meetings with you with the relevant government departments, if that's what you need, or giving additional weight to the causes that you're raising. Adjacent to what you said, I've said I'll launch a commission on disability inclusion, which I know has some overlap with this area. We'll build the evidence base to make the case at a national level and a communal level for what we need to see in terms of provision. But absolutely, we need to be working with all of our member organisations as well as synagogues. One of the things I'd like to do is create a council of those organisations so that we have a better sense of what their needs are in addition to what the synagogues are around the country.
Thank you, Phil. And Michael.
Johnny, work of mental health is just outstanding, and it's really important for the community and increasing. The Board of Deputies has a number of organisations like yourself involved, and we've not done enough in terms of working together with the charitable organisations. And it's really important that we pull everybody together very quickly. We go out there, we support them, do what they're asking us to do with government, but also give them the support that they need. I know that has to be done in conjunction with the JLC, who are there working very much with the charities. But it's a really important thing that we do, and we get going with that very quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, my apologies, everyone. I know there are still more questions that you want to ask. By all means, I'm sure if you email them in or pop over to Leeds tomorrow night, is it? And you can ask your question in person. I am now going to ask the candidates if one by one they can just give us their closing remarks, and starting with Sheila, please.
Thank you, David. I have 3 priorities if I was elected president. One is to challenge the lies and the biased reporting we see every time we turn the TV on and we read the papers. I hate it. I won't watch the news. We need to shout louder. We need to have a mechanism to get onto the BBC and to the other places where we could do this amazing work so as we can be heard. I would educate about Israel, educate about being Jewish, and also bring the deputies in on this with skills and experience all over the country to get this work done. They have not been used. And I want to quote Hillel, paraphrase Hillel from the Pirkei Avot. If we are not for ourselves, who will be for us? If we are only for ourselves, what are we? If not now, when?
Thank you. Phil.
Well, first of all, a big thank you to you, David, for stepping in last minute. I think you've done a brilliant job keeping us unruly folks in order. And a big thank you to you for listening to us. You know, you've heard from us all, and now it's decision time for you. And I would put to you 5 questions to help you make up your mind. Who do you think is going to best represent our community on question time? Who do you think is most likely to be able to speak to the TikTok generation? Who has the strongest connections across politics, the media, faith and diplomacy to make our case at the highest levels? Who has the strongest track record of delivery within this organisation, and who has the strongest plan for its future? I believe the answer to all of these 5 questions is the same, and I ask for your vote on the 12th of May. For now, thank you very much for listening, good evening, and most importantly, Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Amanda.
Thank you.
Hold on. Got stuck to the ground.
Okay. My mission is for the board to be transparent, accountable and sustainable, relevant and responsive to our community's needs, and a source of pride and inspiration. With 6 years as your Vice President for Defence, you've seen me fight the rising tide of hate and defend and protect our rights and traditions. I've got the experience we need more than ever to work with you to forge a stronger, more resilient community. As your next President, expect strong leadership rooted in service to the community. My promise to you is clear. I'll stand strong, protect and unify our community and purpose. I will listen to and empower deputies in our community, and we will create a board that serves as a beacon of hope and strength for generations to come. I'm asking for your vote to be the next Board of Deputies President for a board that's unified, empowered and transformed. Together, let's build a brighter future for British Jews.
Thank you. Michael.
Thank you, David, and all of you as well. The board must lead and inspire confidence. More of the same simply isn't an option. The world we live in needs strong, experienced and effective leadership. I have led and chaired charities, Maccabi, synagogue organisations, and outside of the community, I've led the Bradford Regeneration Company and was Deputy Chair at University of Leeds, and I sit as Vice Chairman of the Faith and Belief Forum. We all see priorities now as taking on the challenges of Jew hatred and poverty. We must act immediately and act now, and this all requires us to work together as a community. If we're divided, there's little we can do. However, if we are united, there's little we cannot do. We need to work together, and I ask all of you to elect me as your next president. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And can I ask you to join me in thanking our candidates for being here tonight?
You all deserve a well-deserved break. You can leave the stage. Can I ask
in the second part, if I can just ask everyone to stop talking, I'd appreciate that, please. And now I'm going to start with, call upon Jeremy to do his introduction.
Thank you, David. In seeking your support for Vice President of the Board, I know that I can unite an increasingly polarised body which leads a polarised community. I have a record of deputy empowerment. As Regional Vice Chair of the Regional Deputies Assembly and Council, I successfully campaigned for the appointment of a Board of Deputies Regional Manager. And earlier, on the Communities and Education Division, I argued for more deputy input before board staff and honorary officers meet ministers and civil servants. In Greater Manchester, where I've been on the Jewish Representative Council on and off since the turn of the century, I empowered educators to set up the Judaism for Schools group and also the Northern Holocaust Education group. Basically, I get groups together, I help them set themselves up, and then I move back and let them get on with it, and I look for the next gap in education provision. Education is very much my forte. I want to minimise the isolation of regional deputies by having sub-regional deputies meetings. That is, meetings within the regions, organised by myself, don't worry Sarah, organised by myself, and encourage proactive use of deputies' WhatsApp groups to help each other. Anti-Semitism must be fought by building alliances with other faith and ethnic groups.
Thank you, I have to stop you there. Thank you very much. And now if I can ask Andrew to introduce.
Hi, my first job took me to Preston, and I lived in Chorley. I spent my free time building the then newly created RSY Netza as youth worker of Manchester Reform, Menorah and Cherry Shalom, as well as running midweek clubs in Southport. I built my friendship with John Mann, who I'd known before he came to Manchester University, and my grandmother kept me in touch with her cousin, Bella Ansell, later to be the head of the Manchester Rec Council. And I represented RSY Netza on the Manchester Rec Council and the ZCC back in the 1980s. Back last November, I was proud to organise JLM's first Northern Conference at the People's History Museum, and we have another event in Manchester in September. Today I come back to Manchester looking for the support at this critical time. We need to focus on the national, regional, local and hyper-local needs of our community and respond with action, not just with words. We need to collaborate and keep informed. I had a great day today, but first I went through it with Mark Levy and Mark Edelstone, as our community is going to work together. I went to the Fed, and I met with Bernard Yaffe and saw your incredible Heathlands Village, where I was happy to bump into the CST team. I met with the Elena, the leader of Rochdale Council, to discuss what we do about Galloway. I went to meet the Deputy of Salford Council, also leads on health, and we discussed the strictly Orthodox community and compared many things. We are one community with similar needs. We will succeed when we work together. One people with one heart. It's lovely to be back in Manchester.
Thank you. There's some feedback, and I'm not sure what feedback is. No, okay. Denise.
Sorry, before I start, Sarah, the green and the red, what does that mean?
20
How many
seconds.
20
Yeah, 20 seconds from green to red.
Thank you, because I came late, the delay trains. Okay.
It's your choice.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to be back in Manchester. I studied law at Manchester University. I love Manchester. I love your community. You're loud, proud, committed, and it's great to see representatives from Leeds and Liverpool, because I have some knowledge, certainly of Liverpool, and I'd like to have some more knowledge of Leeds. Why me? I'm a deputy of 30 years standing, and I've been on the Defence Division for many years. I'm a solicitor advocate, and at Law Society National Council and Committee level, I'm used to going to government and advocating the legal professions case. I would like to do the same on a more proactive basis for you. I will visit you regularly. Please would you welcome me? I want to see that the regions are better actively represented. My communal record includes being on the Ajax Advisory Committee and leading the march. More recently, I have been involved in the Blow the Chauffeur for Hostages campaigns, and as a press photographer, know the power of an image for the JC, and also as a media commentator, I know how to change the media narrative. I want to see younger deputies involved, and I want to see a vibrant, forward-facing board.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Adrian.
Adrian, do you want this?
Yeah, there you go. He's got it. Do you want to keep it now? Yeah, thank you.
First of all, thank you to the Manchester Jewish community for hosting us. Last time I was here was on 21st of January, and I was here for the anti-Semitism rally, and I was really proud to be with such a determined and courageous community. Thank you very much. And I've been here for the 2 regional weekends as well during the last triennium, and I've got great respect for Manchester. I've been fighting for the Jewish community all of my life. I was president of UJS in the 80s. In the 90s, in the international law firm, I was building an Israel practice and active for the State of Israel. In the 2000s, I helped establish an anti-boycott organisation called Engage. And I've gone on to lead, to take senior positions in the community, including governance trustee for the Jewish Leadership Council and chair of Labour Friends of Israel. We are at a critical juncture. These are unprecedented times. I've been down to the Gaza envelope twice since the 7th of October, and I've heard testimony and I've seen things that will be etched on my soul forever. But back here, we have big challenges around policing, community safety, and the erosion of social cohesion. The Board of Deputies has to steer clear of controversy. The Board of Deputies has to be about delivery, and it has to be about keeping our community at the heart of everything that we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Owen.
Good evening. I'm Owen Powell. There is absolutely no doubt that it'll be a case of all hands on deck in the new triennium as we all support the board's work on challenging anti-Semitism, anti-Israel hate, and indeed anti-Zionism. However, there can also be very little doubt that for the new triennium, the board will want to develop and grow. And for that reason, I'm standing for Vice President to be a voice for diversity and inclusion, particularly in the context of disability and the regions. So I'm hoping that you will agree with me that there is a need for this and you will give me your support. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to open it up for questions from the audience. Again, can I remind you, please, keep the questions as short and to the point as possible. Thank you. Who would like to ask the first question? Anyone with a question? Yes.
Good evening. A question for all of you, which I would have asked to the presidents as well, or the would-be presidents. What is your key aim? The one thing that if you can get it over the line in your 3 years, what would that be?
So can we have your name as well?
Oh, Stephen Moss.
Okay, and I'm just going to use a list in front of me and go from top to bottom here. So, Adrian, I'm going to start with you, please.
Slight poetic license here, but I think there are two things that I'm allowed to say that. The first is we undoubtedly are in the middle of a massive crisis, and so I think that the first thing that happens as the new elected HOs is to get our arms around this, and with the executive, and obviously the chief executive and the staff, and to work out what our plan is for the next few months. That's the first thing. The second thing is it's about relevance and credibility. And the Board of Deputies has too often been the subject of the news rather than driving the news with regard to the issues that impact upon the community. And so that's about reorientating, redirecting the board so that it actually pulls in the community. As I said in my opening remarks, we have to have the community with us at the heart of what we're doing. It doesn't mean that we do everything. We also have to have an eye on our resources, and we also have to have an eye on everybody else that's out there in the community that are doing things. But we have to be very clear-eyed about how we build the confidence of the community and everyone else who's active in the community. So that's what I have in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Over to Andrew now.
Yeah, thanks very much, Stephen. I'd like to see a real widening of the membership of the board, and in that widening of the membership of the board, bring synagogues who are not members at the moment, but also bring in and making sure we're servicing those other organisations, things like health organisations, charities, by understanding what they're doing and really working specifically at how they connect with government outside. So I don't think we've yet done anything like the job we could do, and we've got a new government, I suspect, coming in, and if we're going to do it in the next 3 years, I think that would be my focus.
Thank you. And the same question for Denise.
I want to see the Board of Deputies not only maintain but enhance its prominence, relevance to and beyond the Jewish community, and be the well-funded, well-mobilised, with a clear, agile working, including amongst the deputies, not only formalised but formalised, the deputies knowing each other better, working in a much more sophisticated modern style with a clear also empowerment path and career path for those under 35 observers and future leaders of our community, and bringing in more organisations and working closely with the CAA and the JLC on a collaborative basis, and working with whoever's our president and executive. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Same question for Jeremy.
Thank you. The way I believe in tackling anti-Semitism, one of the ways I would go about it is education. Like Sheila, I've been very, very much involved in education. In fact, I'll go further and say there's probably not a Jewish person alive in Britain today that has the experience that I have had in teaching about Judaism to non-Jews, having been at the Jewish Museum for 18 years, where I oversaw 250,000 people coming in groups, and when I was on Judaism with Jeremy, I taught something like 20 to 30,000 people at least in the years that I did it. So basically I would want to really push that side of it, get Jewish representation on the Standing Advisory Council for Religious Education, and really push the treatment of the teaching of Judaism in the wider community, because that, I think, helps to break down the barriers of incomprehension and ignorance that fuels racism.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. And just a reminder for the question, your key aim, your one thing you want to get over the line in your 3 years.
I really do think the board need to address the regions. Now that might sound as if this is a cliche, but my view, it needs to be done. But we need to ask ourselves why the regions are not fully representative. Because in my view, the board is wide open for people with their ideas. That's why I'm here. So rather than those of us in the region sort of feeling a little bit sorry for ourselves and thinking it's all happening in London, I think it's so important for us in the region to get in there and make things happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Ivan.
Thanks, David. I think we all agree that modern anti-Semitism is primarily through the prism of anti-Zionism. So what would the board do under your leadership to make representations to the Israeli government to ensure that there is much better public relations in terms of the case that Israel makes and its impact not only on the diaspora community in this country, but on diaspora communities across the world? What responsibility do you feel the board has to do this?
Okay, Andrew, let's go to you first.
Yeah. Thanks, Ivan. I've just joined the executive of an organisation called Global Jury, and Global Jury is looking with with initiatives that come out from President Herzog and others about how we join up in terms of peoplehood of the Jewish world. And I think it's a dual task. I don't think it's something that we've ended up in this sort of dichotomy of an argument with the Minister of Diaspora, and I don't think it's about that. We've got to show a path of credible work around how we strengthen our own communities and absorb resources in terms of the United States and in Israel, but we're one of the largest Jewish citizens and in the world, in London, but also Manchester, large communities, and we've got to turn around and make sure they're resourced and have education. Our Jewish schools and campus, and we've lost the year scheme programs of times gone by. And we need to rebuild chances for Hasbara and really looking at what is taught in Jewish schools and how we therefore develop that. And at the same time, build competence and sensitivities in infrastructure.
So, thank you. Denise.
Well, there's no doubt that there is a conflation between anti-Israel and anti-Zionism, and Mark Regev indeed has spoken about that. And you raise a very important question, Ivan. I think that we need to directly go to the Israeli embassy and say you need to put more positive messaging out there. You need to have people on air. You need to be issuing more proactive news releases. You need to be across the channels. We don't see Mark Regev on British TV, for example. We don't see our Israeli ambassador. We also need slicker, standalone media as well, because we're getting our positive media feed from social media and our community groups that are out there. So we do need them to help us.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, I have to be strict with the time here. Jeremy, over to you.
Thanks, David. I think there's two ways. I think, yes, of course we have to go through the embassy. We have to talk to them and really get good English-speaking people out there on the media. Particularly, I mean, what's happened with Elon Levy is tragic, you know. And what's even worse is that what he was saying recently, that in fact he was having to more or less make it up as he was going along. I mean, I just couldn't believe that. As well as really going at the Israeli embassy and maybe talking to the Minister of the Diaspora, I think we also have to go the other way to the World Jewish Congress and talk to our English-speaking American allies, for example, in America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and actually approach the Israeli government en bloc and say, look, come on, you know, we need some help here. As Denise mentioned Jewish schools. I think it was Denise.
Thank you, Jeremy. I have to draw that to a close. So, Owen, just as a reminder here, we're talking about the conflation between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism and the messaging that comes out from Israel. And what more can the board do in communication with the Israeli government, or as we said, the Israeli embassy, to improve that messaging and help our case here?
This actually is a very, very difficult question, and over the years I've always, as a matter of course, avoided Israel, simply because I just don't feel I am an expert. I can't be an expert on everything, but this really is an area where I would work hard with colleagues and the professional staff who have the knowledge and experience, because I think it's very, very difficult when people that don't know as much as maybe they ought to, or should, or could, make statements. So I would sort of avoid, to a certain extent, or go on the advice of colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. And Adrian.
Thank you. I mean, in the past I've worked very closely with the Israeli ambassador Mark Regev, and before that Daniel Tobe, and also I have met several times with Dr. Nachman Shai as well, who was Minister for the Diaspora. I think that the quality varies, and we have to work with what we have. What I have discovered is that sometimes there's a lack of appreciation for what it's like in terms of lived experience for diaspora Jews that comes out of the Israeli government or out of the Israeli Ministry of Diaspora Affairs. And there's excellent work that's going on here. For example, Dr. David Hirsch, the Centre for Study of Contemporary Anti-Semitism. And I think that what you really need is a two-way dialogue. You really do need to try to ensure that Israelis appreciate the issues that we're facing and be able to feed into that. And likewise, obviously, we have a lot to learn from them. And yes, we need people like Mark Regev and Elon Levy on our TV screens. Thank you.
Thank you. The question from me over there. If I can ask you just to speak loudly and slowly, that would be appreciated, and keep it short.
This is very brief. So, why doesn't the website of the Board of Deputies state that the Board of Deputies thinks that from the river to the sea is hate speech? Or do any of you think that from the river to the sea isn't hate speech? Why isn't it on the website? And why isn't it below on the website, most British Jews are Zionists? Or do any of you disagree that most British Jews aren't Zionists?
Denise. Over to you.
Well, firstly, I'm not responsible for the website. That said, I hear what you're saying, and you have Michael Uygur, who's the Chief Executive here. I think that you've mentioned two areas, from the river to the sea. I think there's room for an op-ed, certainly from the President as to why that is, but it will also have to go through legal checks, probably, as well, speaking as a lawyer. Or may not be, as the case. I think that I'm certainly happy to advocate the case. And with regard to the Zionist issue, we have an unalienable bond with Israel. But the reality is that not every Jew is a Zionist. Within the progressive community, we heard last week, unfortunately, there are people that are not Zionist.
Thank you, Denise. I've got to stop you there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And I'm just, if I may, my mistake, I'm going to change the question slightly because, as you quite rightly pointed out, they're not responsible for what's on the website. I think the question is more, would you want to see it saying on the website about from the river to the sea, etc.? Shouldn't be allowed. Okay, so I'm going to go over to Jeremy now.
Very good question. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, clearly it is anti-Semitic. I think I would agree with that. To be more honest, I hardly ever look at the board's website because, quite frankly, I find as a partially sighted person, it's actually a disaster because things keep moving so quickly. I can't actually get hold of it. And also trying to find education on the board's website, you might as well ask for a needle in a haystack. So personally, I think the board's website needs a complete overhaul. But so as far as the most Jews are Zionists, unfortunately, I think I agree with Denise, not only in the progressive community, but also in a growing Haredi community. Yes, they are attached to the land of Israel, no question, but not necessarily Zionists. I think they'd probably deny it. So I think that would be, shall we say, a rather dangerous and presumptuous thing to say.
Thank you. Should the board's website refer to from the river to the sea as hate speech? What?
Again, I think this is very, very difficult. On the one hand, I think, yes, the issue is that if the board is for everyone, we've got to not be afraid of some voices that we really feel uncomfortable about, etc., etc. But we just can't exclude. That's all I feel I can say on this.
Okay, Owen, thank you. And sorry, if I can just move on to Adrian.
Yep, thank you. Don't want to rain on Michael's parade, but while we're at it, I don't like the font on the website either. And I have been complaining about that for a while. Yes, there should be something on the website. There should be an explanatory piece which explains what the problem is from the river to the sea. But the biggest issue we have, certainly in London, and I can't be presumptuous enough to talk about Manchester, but in London we have an issue with the word context, with the police, the Metropolitan Police. Had issues around jihad, we've now got issues around the swastika, and there's also issues around the river to the sea. And it's quite clear in the context in which all of these three are used, i.e. the current conflict, that these are hateful. They are being used to delegitimise the state of Israel and use connection with the land of Israel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I comment on the question? I've just found twice on our website where we refer to the river to the sea being an unacceptable statement. I can accept it's not as prompt as it should be, it's something worth looking at, but I just now in 1 minute found it twice.
I'm not sure whether that's heckling or just a correction there. Can we just go back to Andrew, please?
Every Friday morning in London, with Amanda and others from London Jewish Forum, we have a meeting with Gold from the police. And that person's looking at the operation, and we brought up with the CPS, and we've spoken in great detail, and about from the river to sea, all the areas that are considered grey. And it's absolutely simple. It's hate speech, it's awful, it's an anti-Semitic trope. However, as far as CPS is concerned, it does not meet the threshold for anything like prosecution or any further action unless it is outside a synagogue or something. And until we change the law or there's something around it, we have an inability to go further with that. And we're having with all the grey areas. Police are fighting in terms of the Public Order Act and everything else they can do, and then we work closely with them. From the river to the sea is something that's going to, and other things like it are going to change. We've got to change the rules.
Thank you very much. Victor Huglin, if we can stick to the LCC, loud, clear and concise, it will be appreciated.
I'd like to congratulate Michael for that quick addition onto the website. Owen mentioned that he doesn't debate questions on Israel because he's not an expert in that field. Do you think it'd be a good idea to get 3 or 4 excellent speakers who are experts in various fields to answer questions that are put to the board and to the wider community?
Jeremy, over to you.
I certainly think that when we're talking about induction of new deputies, and in fact even of old deputies like ourselves, I think it would be a great idea to have experts really bring us up to date on a whole range of issues, not just Israel, but a whole range of issues affecting Anglo Jewry, British Jewry, and also European and world Jewry. I think that would be an excellent idea, and it's something that, certainly with my interest in education, I would seek to implement.
Thank you. Okay, I got lost there. Sorry. Owen, my apologies.
But if that's actually the lovely question, because obviously I think the board is really effective when it calls on experts, when it delegates, when it engages, when it supports, and when it invites speakers. So of course, it would be really to our advantage to have experts. Thank you.
Thank you. Adrian, same question for you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, there are 3 pools of expertise. One is our staff, who are experienced and have expertise. The second are our deputies, and we should make sure that we do an audit, but we should make sure that audit's properly conducted and utilised. And the third is, yes, we should call upon experts when we don't have the expertise, or where there's somebody who has better expertise. There's no shame in that. I'm chair of Labour Friends of Israel, and we produce pamphlets and publications that go to members of Parliament, and we very regularly use academics and politicians and other people from civil agencies who have great expertise to produce pamphlets on things like anti-Semitism, Iran, etc. Absolutely no shame in that, and yes, we should use people, academics and others, where they have that ability.
Thank you. Same question for Andrew.
Yeah, for many years I had the honour to chair Limud, and that was a wonderful way of bringing education into our community. And more recently with Jewish Labour Movement, by putting in the conferences, we bring that expertise in. Michael Uyghur's brought great lectures on Israel to the board that he gives himself from his great experience, and I pity any deputy that hasn't had the opportunity to watch them, and any of them in the room that haven't really should start watching them. They're all there still to watch. And I think that Hedin Steinsaltz said that British Jewry wasn't a great contributor to world Jewish learning, and what have we ever produced? And the fact is that that's very unfair, and I think there are lots of examples, and we should continue to make more examples, but there's also a lot that we can bring in, and a lot more learning that we can, a lot of things more that we can learn.
Thank you. And Denise.
Yes, in short, we did have an Israeli advocacy group. We certainly need the knowledge, but there's no substitute also for going to Israel and experiencing this. I went on the Board of Deputies mission to Israel, including meeting the British ambassador, and also we have the whole Bring Them Home Hostages campaign, and I've been actively involved in that from the Lovelock Bridge Initiative, the 710 Human Chain, working closely with IBC as a music photographer, and also the Blow the Chauffeur for Hostages with Marcel Noble. And we need to continue the narrative and empower deputies and also empower the public with our messaging, and we need to change the narrative and continue to keep the focus of the hostages in our mind. Thank you.
I just want to make sure, Jeremy, you did answer that at the beginning or not?
Yes, I did.
Yes, you did. Okay. So we've got a question over there, gentleman over there from Leeds again.
I'll ask the question and I'll explain why I'm asking the question. The question is, should the board's constitution be changed so that there is always at least one female honorary officer? And the reason I ask that is this. We've fortunately had female presidents, Marie van der Zil, going back to Joe Wagerman, we've had Sheila Gulob, we've had Amanda, and various other females who've been on the board as honorary officers. There's a very real possibility with a male treasurer, a male chief executive, that will have an entirely male board. How can that, in today's world, be justified when at least 50% of our community are female? So should the board's constitution be changed to ensure female representation as an honorary officer on the board?
Owen, for that question.
Okay.
Yeah.
This really is, I'm beginning everything by saying this is really difficult, but this one really, really is difficult. Simply because my understanding is for inclusion. It's not offering any special favours. It's not giving someone a head start. It's about removing barriers, but ultimately it's about the deputies electing the best person for the job, regardless of gender, sex, blood, etc., etc. But we must ensure that we remove barriers. But I think in this particular case, everyone would be encouraged to stand. So I don't think we can change the Constitution on this particular issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question for Adrian.
It's we have a history of trying to change the constitution. We tried to do that last triennium, and we've actually, in my opinion, I supported all the constitutional changes, and those would have gone a great way to addressing the problem, because there would have been a lot more honorary officers. There would have been 10, and also would have been skills criteria, but it didn't happen. And so I hesitate about changing the constitution, but that's definitely something that I would personally consider. As Owen says, there's a greater cultural issue here, and we all felt that we were making huge progress. We had Gillian Merron as chief exec, Marie as president, and Sheila and Amanda, and we do somehow or other, when you look at it in the round, we do seem to have gone backwards. And that's regrettable. And personally, I've encouraged, I don't want to say names, but I've encouraged women to stand, even though that puts my own candidacy at risk, but I think that's a fair price. And I just think we need to deal with it. It is a real problem.
Thank you. Andrew, same question. Yeah. Oh.
It's actually simpler than that. You don't actually have to change the constitution, because what it says in the constitution is you can add divisions and add a vice president should you so need. So if in the situation that came that there was no woman officer, I believe it's very simple that we would have to add a division and add a vice president, and we can do that within the constitution. And one of the funniest things is that there's so much in that constitution, and if you look and you turn it around and turn it again, as they say in other areas, I think you'll find that we could probably do most of the things that we actually want to do. So look at the constitution, it's already there.
Thank you. And Denise, same question for you.
Thank you ever so much for the question. Well, it's not easy to stand as, hopefully, as the only woman amongst a group of talented gents. You touch on a major issue in terms of gender equality. I sit on the family law group. I've been responsible for the changes in legislation affecting GET. I can work with other women groups. I have a skill set. I can deal with the domestic abuse, and more importantly, in today's 21st century, it's essential, I think, you have a woman at the top table. So I would support that positive change, because I think the board otherwise is going backwards. And at the end of the day, women do have a sensitivity and also have a manoeuvrability to cross community to visit communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy.
I'm very much with Owen on this. If you can show me that there are barriers in the procedures of the board that prevent either women or any other groups from standing and getting representation, then I would do my best, like Owen said, to remove them. But apart from that, I think it's actually quite demeaning, quite frankly. I think of we had 3 honorary officers in the 2018 to 2021 triennium who were women, and I think it's actually quite demeaning on those women and on other really talented women that there are on the board, and I've been privileged to work with loads of them, to say, oh well, we'll have a special place for you because you can't compete with the men. There must be a reason why, there'll be certain occasions where women, for whatever reason, just don't stand. And I think we need to encourage everybody to stand, but it's really up to them.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you. Now, as my school teachers and lecturers used to say to me, or used to say in the classroom, we seem to see the same hands going up, and it'd be really good to hear from other people. So I saw a fresh hand there. Yes, next to you. So loud and concise, please. I don't know.
Royce, I'm a deputy for Manchester Reformed Synagogue. I would have asked the presidential candidates, didn't get in, but you are equally influential. I would like to hear your views on the role of functioning and the timing of the plenary sessions. And if you have any reservations, I'd like to know what I can expect to hear at that. Thank you.
And I'm going to ask Adrian to answer that first.
We've moved a long way from where we were pre-COVID, which was Sunday mornings in person in the BMA in Tavistock Square. And now we're in the world of hybrid meetings. That has upsides. It does build in more flexibility, so including timing. And in the past year, at least the past year, we've had plenary meetings which have actually been midweek in the evening when it's been necessary. And I certainly think we should look at greater flexibility around plenary meetings and mix it up a bit, because that's what's most likely to be optimal. As has been said previously, I think during the presidential debate, we should also, until now we've tied regional plenary meetings to regional weekends, and that's proven to be difficult, so we should certainly ensure that we do have regional meetings, not necessarily tied to weekends, to encourage people to attend.
Thank you. Andrew.
So I think there is an opportunity to change things up and have some form of conference at some stage. It's the first time I've seen many of you since before the pandemic, and I think it's something quite special that we are together here. So I do think there's something we've lost by only seeing each other on screens. And clearly I think the regional weekends and the whole structure hasn't really worked for quite a long time. There's far too many being cancelled. However, I managed to pull off a very strong activity at the People's History Museum, which was actually packed out, sold out and whatever. So why is it that we can do something like that and not there? So I think the conference, I think something more inspirational, and I don't really need to have a meeting that's full of a very long presidential report where the president speaks for 3/4 of the meeting, and I also think we need to go to an independent chair as well, and I think we need to change things up a bit. How's that?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Denise, same question for you.
I'm going to pick up on Andrew's comment. I do think there's a need for an independent chair, because there can be conflicts of interest, intentional or not, that arise during the plenary meetings. With regard to the plenary meetings, COVID has undoubtedly changed everything. In the good old days, we'd shake hands, we'd chat, we'd schmooze, and there's no substitute for that four-dimensional contact. And also, you'd ask questions about what each other's up to, because there's a formalised structure amongst the plenary meetings which disenfranchises us, and there's also a queue, and you can sit there feeling that what's your value or what's your worth. So I think we need a survey to see how we can make it better, and we need to make it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Jeremy.
Thank you. I've been the chair of the Regional Deputies Assembly and Council for the last 3 years, and I've been shouting and screaming, as Michael will tell you, about the timing of meetings, because I have, as soon as it became possible for us to meet in person, I've done my best to travel down to London from Manchester, because I think, like Denise, you can't beat it. You can't beat the personal contact. It's absolutely essential. And so I've, as I said, been shouting and screaming about this for the last 3 years. Sometimes they're 11:30, 11:45, which is okay. Sometimes the railway timetables mess us up. I also want to see 2 regional plenaries a year. I think we can do that in accessible places like Birmingham, or somewhere like that where we can all get to. I think that would be a good idea as well.
Thank you, Jeremy. Owen.
I actually love the plenaries, and I would ideally love to see them all in person, because that is the ideal, because it's a brilliant opportunity to engage, to network, to support each other, and feel very much part of the Board of Deputies. But we need to consult everyone to understand what keeps people from attending meetings. Obviously, we've got to think of access, transportation, meeting to take place somewhere within easy reach of public transport. But ultimately, I think we must face up to and talk about it and get on it to answers, and not just keep postponing it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Owen. Now, I think I saw a new hand next to Victor. Was that you or gentleman in front? Yes, there.
Thank you. I'm Graham Gordon. I've been for many years on Jeremy's excellent JRC Education Committee, and I am standing up. I'm also the J4S coordinator, the Judaism for Schools that Jeremy has mentioned, and I also feel very passionately, and it's been my experience, that education, and I want just to look at all the terrible problems we've got at the moment positively, that education is the best or a very effective weapon against anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. We've heard already from Jeremy.
Can we get to the question?
Yes, the question is how, if you were a vice president, how would you encourage the board to develop further education and Zionism education in a way in which tackles anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism?
Okay, Andrew, over to you.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the Pied Pipers and role models. And I want to pick this up a little bit because it was really sort of a thing about progressive Jews not being Zionists, and therefore it's an area for education. And when I look at the appointment of Golan Ben-Horin at Aleph, and I look at other people, and in terms of Rabbi Gilad Kariv as a Labour MK who's a Reform rabbi, there are lots of role models that we can talk about, and it's about who does that education. And I think it's about getting the right people sometimes to the right places. So I don't want to hold up that doing Zionism properly isn't doing the same Zionism for everybody. We've got I talk about the 5 and the 4, very different Zionist youth movements. If you talk to Ben Akiva or FZY on one side, or you talk to Habonim and Netzer on the other, they're doing Zionism differently. So I would talk about what education is and finding the right role models and the right people to stand up. And I would praise Aleph in appointing Rabbi Golan Ben-Horin, whose father, Tovia Ben-Horin, of course, was Rabbi at Manchester Reform in the good old days. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Denise.
Well, I think we need to be more agile and be more media savvy. So, picking up on the Jewish Way of Life exhibition, I think there's room for videos about Jewish values, which are key to social cohesion and explaining to the wider community that actually we're a peaceful ethnic group and community. And there may be more, and there's also commonality in terms of our burial rites, our way of dress, our kashrut stroke halal as well. And also, so I'd like to see that. There needs to be some fundraising for that. We need to pull in educators. And I also think we could use deputies on the ground and your talents and your contacts as well, please, as well with Jeremy's. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Jeremy.
Thank you. 2 things. One, with Jewish schools, I think we need to approach the education about Israel and Zionism in a rather more nuanced way. I think sometimes it's been presented in Jewish schools with the best of intentions in a very black and white way. And when our kids leave the school and go to university and they get a barrage of anti-Israel propaganda, which seems to contradict them, they find it very difficult to sort that out. And I think, as I said, I think not everything that's ever happened in the state of Israel has always been good. And I think sometimes we have to say, look, this is what happened and this is why. With non-Jews, certainly, I think it is very much a case of trying to make sure that Judaism is taught properly. And as far as Israel, that's very difficult because it just depends on where it comes in the history curriculum. And that's, in the national curriculum, and that's really is not easy. Whether it can be taught effectively in general studies, I don't know.
Thank you. Owen.
Brilliant question. Can I just give you one example of an idea? It's the JLEE exhibition, which I'm bringing to Salford. The idea, delivered in a slightly different way than it's usually done. It's going to be held in a Salford community centre on a housing estate, right near the shopping centre, and I'm getting a number of agencies involved, whether it's NHS, housing association staff, etc., etc. The exhibition is for the adults to see and to really encourage the community to engage with professional staff, whether it's in the NHS or housing, etc., to break down barriers and create better understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. And Adrian.
Thank you. I mean, education is a big word, and I think we're talking about some very different things here. So, in terms of Jewish education and Israel education, there are lots of things the board does do. So, one of the things which I've participated in, I gave a talk on the Altalena affair. We run an Israel education programme, and it'd be great for more people to volunteer to give sessions and to encourage people to participate in that. I think education always starts with ourselves, and one of the things I've continued to do, for example, is the Daf Yomi programme. But there's 70 faces in Jewish tradition, 70 faces of the Bible and of Judaism. And as Andrew says, there are numerous different traditions and ways in which to teach. Education is hugely important in community relations, in terms of interfaith engagement, and then also we slide into the subject which we have talked about previously, which is Hasbara. So I think these are very, very different things. But I certainly think that we have to treat all of those three things with great importance.
Thank you. Now we started a few minutes late, so I'm going to take one more question. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I'd like Shelley Rubenstein, Whitefield Hebrew Congregation. I'd like to ask about how you are going to engage with young people who are the future leaders, particularly those who are in youth movements, who are having training through being youth leaders, and how can you get involved with them sooner? I remember when I was a Madracha in Habonim quite a long time ago, nobody from the Board of Deputies in those days ever came, but I think now there could be a lot more that you could do because you've got ready-made leaders who've had training. How are you going to encourage that?
Okay. Denise, start with you.
Shelley, it's an excellent question, and I'm really frustrated by the fact that we've got such talent, for example, the under 35 observers, with no buddying and career path and vacancies, and there should be vacancies and we should be getting them on the board because they are the future, and they've got the energy and they've got the tech savvy and on the ground. The Defence Division does work with UJS within its work streams, and there are excellent leaders, but we don't want to lose them. And Habonim, I know you got everybody from Erin Baron Cohen, Sacha Baron Cohen's brother, who I photograph and work with otherwise, and other leaders. So I am absolutely with you. We should be visiting those movements and we should be encouraging them to come on the board, and we should create vacancies, and we need their talent. Thank you.
Denise. Thank you. Jeremy.
Yeah, there's no question about it that I think we do need to try and engage with them more. Yes, my shul, Steen Court, actually does have an under 35 deputy, and I want to make sure that we have one again in the next triennium. But yes, it's getting them when they're in their sort of upper high school, I would suggest. Upper high school and, of course, university. And I think we could possibly do more to engage with them. Besides the brilliant work the Defence Division does with them, I think we could do more to engage with them. But I think we've got to plan it carefully, because if somebody was just to say, well, someone from the Board of Deputies is going to come and talk to you about the board, they'll probably say, oh, God, who wants that? You know, let's be honest, would you have wanted that when you were 16, 17? Possibly not. So we've really got to be quite, creative in the way we do it.
Thank you, Jeremy. Owen, over to you.
This really is an inclusion issue. And there's just one area of the board that I just don't quite grasp. Is the under 35 observers? Because that sounds like as if, you know, they're all in their teens or something. 35 is quite old. So we really, really should drop that. We desperately need to get our young people more involved. And one way would be to reduce the under 35s observer to be blunt, I think under 20 is more realistic. Good question, thank you.
Thank you, Owen. Adrian.
I've got a fair amount of engagement with younger people, so I sit on the advisory board of the LSE Faith Centre, and I've been working with LSE as an alumnus of the college since the 7th of October, working with the Jewish Society and with academics in the college. And I've also done a certain amount of work with the Union of Jewish Students, as well as publishing an article. I think I was one of the oldest people to ever publish an article in the UJS newsletter called Aleph, if anyone's interested. But it's as Jeremy said, I think the key here is that you've got to be welcomed to do that role. You can't seek to impose yourself, and you have to make sure you're giving them something that assists them rather than gets in the way of them. And just very briefly, if one can mention one's own family, I've got 3 children now in their 20s, 2 of whom were JSOC presidents, and 1 was the president of the Israel Society, and they're networked obviously into other friends of that age, and so I get a pretty good feedback from them as to what younger people are thinking, and I'd like to see much more of them in the board.
Adrian.
Thank you.
Andrew, engagement with the younger community.
We're about to have a shock at the board that 80% of those people between the age of 23 and 35 from this shrine are about to leave the board. Just own it. We've got a problem. Post-pandemic, the youth movements are not where they were before, students are not where they were before, the mental health issues that are around there. We need to help empower them. We need to do re-education to people in schools as well that went through the pandemic. This is a time bomb, and it's something that we can help. The youth movements, I spent work with Michael when he was at UGIA. I was the chair of the UGIA's UK programme. That was supporting youth movements in an incredible way. Terrible challenge we've got ahead of us. The board might play a role, but we've got to empower those youth movements and really get them to think. And we've also got to realise they don't want to sit at our table. The Under 35s programme is pure patronising, and we've got to grow up and understand that.
Thank you so much. Okay, now come to the final part, when I'm going to ask you all to have your closing remarks. So I'm going to start with Adrian, please.
First of all, thank you again for giving us this opportunity. I've learnt an awful lot from the questions and the comments that have been made by you, but also from my fellow candidates as well, and I think that's been very stimulating and very helpful. We do live, as everyone said, in unprecedented times. You do need, I believe, seasoned HOs to help to steer the ship in choppy times. But the really crucial issue is that you need full deputy engagement. You have to have a sense of common ownership, and that can only come through meaningful consultation and meaningful engagement of all deputies. Let's just try and celebrate the great deal that we have in common. Too often we find what's different between us, and let's all work for the betterment of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Andrew.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's a real opportunity we have to do things differently. A much more conciliatory, a board that actually listens to its deputies. And I think there is something special. I've phoned around so many deputies and spoken with you and found things I just didn't know. And how we have failed to use the talents and skills of deputies frightens me. And we've got such a wonderful base. And so I want to change that. I also want us to collaborate with other organisations, co-production, co-delivery. Let's do it differently. Let's work together and let's build our community together.
Thank you. Janine.
Thank you for your attendance and your questions and for having us. Everybody here represents committed Judaism and communities outside London, and you are a microcosm of UK Jewry, and we need to be energised with you, standing shoulder to shoulder and working to promote the Board of Deputies. And I would do that with dedication and passion alongside you, the honorary officers and the staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Jeremy.
As regional chair, I would want to see, in the next triennium, much closer working with the JRCs. Particularly, I've tried to get deputies in the regions to work with their local JRCs. I want to see that much more closely done, so we work together. And really, I want to see the regions play a much greater role than they have been in the past, but it's things that we have to work on. And it can't wait for the board to come to us. We have to go to the board with our ideas. And therefore, I think that, as far as I'm concerned, a vote for me would be a vote for a united board, empowered deputies, and a positive, dynamic leadership. And that's what I aim to provide.
Thank you. And Owen, the floor is yours.
It really would be a wonderful thing if the board decided to take on board the issue of disability inclusion. To take into account there's a very sizable number of us in the community who lack access because of various barriers to fully participate. But I think the board is ready to change now and set in place a programme to enable us to fully get involved in everything that we're doing. And I think to lead by example would be a wonderful thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, can I personally thank you all for coming out tonight and for your questions. I have to say, running CST was easy compared to chairing this and being worried about missing green signs and red signs and orders and who asked what and when. But thank you. And can you join me in thanking our candidates here again tonight? And join me in wishing all of the candidates that we've heard from tonight the best of luck. So thank you. Michael, would you like the last words?
Well, it reads thanking the tech team, thanking CST who are outside, thanking Sarah Radivan, who helped put together both today and tomorrow in Leeds and Thursday in Glasgow. And a huge thank you to you, the candidates, and David, you stepped in. Had I not said you stepped in at the last minute, I think everyone would have thought you've been preparing for days, because you were smooth, you were fabulous, you were strong, you were kind.
You don't need me again, stop
and
it.
Thank you very much to you.
Well done, David. Well done.
Good evening, and I thank you all very much indeed.